Now we're recording. All right,
Awesome.
gentlemen. So welcome to the Reality Playground podcast. I am brand new at this. This is literally episode 3, and you're my first. Yeah, you guys are actually my first guest who aren't just some friends of mine BSing. So
Oh,
we're
nice.
yeah. So nothing fancy, nothing crazy, but cheers. Glad to have you on.
Man.
So man, I stumbled upon you guys through Facebook. Um, and I saw the haunted Virgin house. And it's funny to me because I grew up not too far away from there, and I had no idea that a place existed until probably like a year and a half ago or so. Um, so I guess if you don't mind, let's just start out. You guys kind of tell me a little bit about yourselves and your history, kind of what got you here,
Yeah, of
blah
course.
blah blah.
Yeah. So me and Mike are brothers, 17 months apart. I'm 38. He just turned 37, right?
I did. Yep.
So we've known each other obviously our whole lives, and we didn't grow up anywhere haunted or have anything like that happen to us when we were kids. What got me into the paranormal was Unsolved Mysteries, the original show with
Yeah,
Robert
Robert
and
Stack. Yeah.
yeah. and I've ever since then I was kind of like obsessed with ghost books and finding books in the library and stuff like that. And Mike, he had an experience when he was growing up working at a restaurant.
Yeah, I actually, Steve was into this way before I was. I worked as a manager at a local restaurant, and one night when I was turning off the lights, I had an experience where there was an apparition in front of me, and that was really, we heard rumors from older employees that the restaurant was always haunted, and it was just that. It was just rumors. Nobody actually saw anything.
Mhm.
And then it wasn't until I had my back towards the kitchen. I was flipping some light switches, and when I turn around, something just it was right in front of me. It had its hands up. It was a real long, kind of oblique face with giant, just black eyes and no real shape. There was no real outline to it. It was, I don't want to say it was misty, but it was a shape, but it wasn't a shape. And it was real enough where I literally jumped back into the wall. Like I was knocked into the wall.
I can imagine
And
so. Yeah.
it just, I was the only one there. And once I just kind of shook my head, realized what happened, like just trying to figure out what happened, like there was nothing there. And I literally ran out of the building. I called my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, and immediately she just kind of asked me like, what's wrong? Like she said, just the tone in my voice, she had never heard me like that before. And we were together for years at that point. And it was something that kind of just startled me to my core, and at the same time made me, I guess, kind of question it more. Like I never really thought about the paranormal experience. We both grew up Catholic, and were raised Catholic, so we have that, the heaven and hell, and that was our background, and that was our version of the afterlife. And you die, you go one way or the other.
Right.
And
Pretty
I
cut
never,
and dry.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it was. And I had never thought anything beyond that. And I guess this was the first time I really was like, what's a ghost? Like, is it like, it was the first time I actually questioned whether it was real or not. I was at a point where I was like, okay, I was early mid 20s. I never cared about it. I never thought about ghosts. And I was just like, okay, maybe ghosts are real. I have no idea. I didn't actively look for them. And then this happened to me, and something just kind of like just clicked in my head where I was like, what is this about? Like, is it something so realistic? Is it because I'm a firm believer in science. Like I have a math degree. Things are very cut and dry for me. Like I'm very black and white and very logical when I come to
Like data oriented and
yeah.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
like, that's what I do now. Like I work on computers, I work in Excel, like I'm working analytics. And it's so for something that I couldn't get to an answer, something where it's, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. And it kind of, it was something that I had never dealt with before. And it was just, the more I thought about it, the more I talked to Steve about it and some of the other employees. And there's one other member of our group who used to work with me there too.
Mhm.
And we would talk about stories, and it, that just kind of led me down this road of, all right, I kind of want to find more about this.
So I guess I'm probably jumping the gun quite a bit here, but are you any close to finding your answer about what a ghost is, or are you still in the search of?
That's a good question.
That's a really good question, and it's one that I go back and forth with all the time. So, like I mentioned, we were raised Catholic. I don't necessarily, I wouldn't call myself an atheist. Like, I do believe there is something beyond this world, but I don't necessarily know what it is. I don't follow the Catholic belief system. So I guess, and I was actually talking with our mom about this because she's still very active in the church, and just goes down that path. She has a strong faith in her, and just trying, okay, when we die, is a person who is a spirit somebody that's waiting to go to heaven or hell? Like, are they stuck in this world as some sort of like purgatory, or is this just something like, at one point I was like, well, maybe nothing happens after you die, like you're just dead. But then through our investigations, like there has just been too much stuff which I just can't explain as coincidental or a light coming out of my glasses, or just things like that. There's just too many things for me to think that there is nothing in this paranormal world. And that's kind of what keeps us going. Like, we've had great investigations, we've had not great investigations where it ends up being, 5 of us hanging around in a quiet place, like with nothing going on. And that's just the nature of this game. So to answer your question, yes, I think I definitely believe that there is something beyond just we live, we die, we go to heaven or hell. And I definitely believe that there is some sort of world beyond this world that still interacts with the world that we're physically in. Like, there's just too much for me to believe that that isn't the way. And that's my personal belief. We're, as a group, we're not out to try and make everybody a ghost believer. Everybody has their belief systems. Everybody believes their own version of the afterlife, and we're not trying to change that from anybody. We're just a group of friends who share the same interests and want to do this together. And worst case scenario, if we have a boring night and there's no evidence happening and there's nothing going around, and it ends up being 5 of us hanging out, ribbing on each other, telling stories.
Right.
And things like that. So
we're big Simpsons fans.
So we're big Simpsons fans.
Start a bit and we'll continue with it, and he'll jump on.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we're of the same generation, so I'm 35, so I get it. So I grew up on Unsolved Mysteries as well. I don't know if you remember that show, Sightings, back in the day.
That's not ringing a bell, no.
Oh yeah, well, they've got episodes on YouTube, old VHS episodes. They're pretty interesting.
What's the one with Leonard Nimoy? It's
In Search Of. Yeah.
I've never seen those on reruns. Yeah.
So getting back to the I guess I'll just call it a theory. The theory of it, ghosts possibly being some sort of or spirits rather, some sort of purgatory here. That's horrifying. And for me, I mean, I'm a husband, a father. If I died and I'm stuck here, searching for my family for eons or whatever it may be, like, gosh, man, that sounds horrifying. So I guess I hope that's not the case, right? I mean, yeah, I think if I was going to be in purgatory, like, I don't know, put me in a place full of snakes and spiders or something. Just don't put me around my family who can't contact me, but I see them all the time or whatever.
Right. No, I get it. I mean, a husband and a father as well. And I don't know what you are. But no, that's exactly it. The idea of a spirit being somebody that's waiting to go to another dimension or version of the afterlife, or waiting to go somewhere else, that is scary, because as we have found and talked to other investigators or psychics or mediums, anything like that, there are, maybe a spirit doesn't know that they can go beyond this world. Maybe there is something larger keeping them in this world. It's just, we've come across situations where we'll be asking questions to a spirit and we'll get some clear-cut answers as to, there's one particular example I can think of. We were having a great K2 session where we were getting some really good yes or no answers. And the questions we were asking, one of them that always jumped out to me is there something that's keeping you in this house that won't let you leave? And it very clearly answered yes. And to your point, thinking about, is that what the spirit life is? Could there be something that for whatever reason wants to keep you in a certain location where you can't leave? Is there an evil spirit that, it's doing something with you? And that is definitely something that I have thought about, and I don't know an answer, but we've come across situations where it sounded like it could be the answer for some version of the spirit we came across.
So I have a friend that's from the Bronx that is 100% skeptic, right? So he's always wanting me to answer his questions about what we think everything is. And he's got this super big Bronx accent. He's like, oh, what are these ghosts? What are they? And so I try to explain it like, I don't know what they are, but he's like, how come they don't appear when I ask them to appear? He came on one hunt with us and it was extremely disruptive. So we kicked him out of all forthcoming hunts. But I explained it to him like, tornado chasers, right? We know now more about what makes a storm, what creates a storm, the pressure conditions that are needed. And people go out and they're trying to study the tornadoes and all that stuff. And, I can't just sit here and say, I study tornadoes. Let's have one, here. I don't believe in tornadoes. I've never seen one. Make one appear in front of me. I don't know what the conditions are that are necessary for a tornado. I'm not, some meteorologist.
Right.
But that's how I kind of liken it for him. He's like, oh, it's totally different. I actually think it's one and the same. I can't tell when something's going to happen, when we're going to hear footsteps of something that's not there. I've never seen a full-bodied apparition. I've only seen shadow people. You can't predict when someone's going to see that. And I think it's just something that hasn't been found out yet. We just don't know enough about it.
That's a good analogy. Yeah. With a tornado. Yeah, I like that.
And hopefully someday.
Yeah. So to bring it back to the beginning again, even the name of your group, where does that dwell from?
That's actually, so we are, we're big heavy metal fans. We were trying to think of what's a cool name. We did a couple investigations where we were just friends hanging out. Actually, our first one we did was the restaurant that I saw the figure in, and unfortunately in the investigation we didn't find anything. But those first couple we didn't have a name, and then we were just like, all right, what do we like? We all like the same music, and one of the groups we were just basically listing off band names that, if you add paranormal to the end of it, does it sound cool? And we love the band At The Gates, and that's literally where it came from.
Hey, right on. Okay.
So I mean, if we're, people joke around, oh, you guys ever get in trouble? And I was like, well, if we're big enough where we're gaining the attention of a very influential heavy metal band in Sweden, then okay, we'll consider changing our name. But for a group of 5 friends in Buffalo, going on these amateur ghost hunts, then
right. Well, the Swedes are pretty cool. I feel like they'd probably let you.
They're pretty cool, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm familiar with some of the equipment that you guys use, and my only knowledge of that comes from the show Ghost Hunters back in the early 2000s.
Yep.
I'm sure you guys are probably privy to that in some way.
Very influential.
Yeah,
I would imagine so. So, I know about the EMF detector. So I don't know if you guys don't mind just kind of talking a little bit about that. Because I heard you mention the K2. I've heard that before, but I'm not quite sure how it works. So,
okay.
So the K2 is essentially just the EMF detector.
Yeah.
It just essentially reads electromagnetic frequencies, and a lot of times if you key up, like for example, we have walkie-talkies, and we'll key it up, and that frequency will spike it. or
Okay.
your cell phone. If you're receiving text messages, things are going. So when we're using it, we're careful. We put our cell phones on the table. We go away from them. We do a sweep to make sure there's no electrical, lines running or data lines, things like that would give false readings.
What's the distance that you have to keep it away from your electronics roughly? Just a couple feet
Yeah,
or?
probably about 5 to 10 feet.
Yeah, it's not huge, but it's still something that we want to be mindful of, because we
Sure.
know it's the, like, ghost hunters or any, like, these big name ghost shows, like, they make it look really easy, and they make it seem like they're always catching something on these devices. And I mean, majority of the time we're waiting around, but when we do use these devices, we want to be 100% sure that, okay, we heard a noise, we're kind of close to traffic, or we see this weird light that's moving around, could it be this? So, like, we basically kind of go into each investigation. All right, we're all skeptics. Prove that you exist. Prove that there is something here. Because it's too easy to say, oh, I heard something. There's a ghost right behind me because I heard a sound behind me.
Right.
And at the same time, we're in a 200-year-old farmhouse with wood that's, constantly moving and shaking in the wind or whatever. And it's something like that. So with the equipment, going back to your original question, with the K2, we'll go through the whole facility wherever we are, and make sure we're not getting any false positives or anything like that.
And here's the thing too, is like with the K2, we've only got 1 or 2 good sessions out of 100 that we've tried.
Yeah.
Really?
So for those sessions that come through, we know are legit, because it doesn't, everything else is normal. There's nothing that spikes it that's abnormal. And when we had it happen, it was pretty cool. It was at the Hinsdale house, and it was definitely paranormal because it was beyond the normal at that point.
Yeah, it was a situation where we were sitting in a bedroom in the upstairs where there's no electricity or anything. We put the meter in the middle of the floor. Nothing was happening. It was about 15 minutes where me and Steve were just talking. We were just BSing back and forth, and all of a sudden it just started going off. Like, the lights were flashing.
Yep.
So then the way we kind of, we would just ask yes or no questions. If it's yes, go make this light up. If it's no, just don't make it light up. And,
Okay.
Normally we need something to be extremely clear. And like, if we ask it 10 times, oh, look, it lit up 4 times or so, like, these were so clear, like, they answered the question right on cue, and it was just something that we could not explain.
We'd ask it to hold too. We'd be like, okay, turn it off. And we'd wait purposely. And then we'd be like, okay, can you answer yes or no to this question? We'd give it maybe like a 15-20 second gap to make sure it wasn't like, just some sort of normal spike. Same thing with the flashlights. We do the same thing with the flashlight thing. Flash sessions.
Okay. So is that where you kind of, what do? You kind of like loosen up the light bulb or something? Or like, how does that work with the flashlight? Or does it, do they get it to click it, or how does that work?
So yeah, we loosen up the end to really where all it needs is a push on the end, a slight push on the end to activate it.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of leave it. And sometimes, so the thing we got to watch out for is there's a charge from the batteries that's trying to get to the coil to turn the light on. And if you have it loose, one of the things that could happen is, because it's trying to do that, it might just turn it on, and it's a normal function. It's nothing that's abnormal or paranormal. So we kind of give it certain conditions. If we do start seeing it, if there's no rhyme or reason to what we're seeing, then we know this is just happening. This is just a normal phenomenon. But when we tell it to turn off and we have it stay off, and then we'll wait, and then we'll go back to questioning, light up, turn off, light up, turn off, then we know something's going on.
Yeah.
And one time we left one at a museum in Palmyra. We were upstairs. I forgot I left one on the floor, and I'm going through the surveillance cameras about 2 months later. And I'm sitting there, and about 60 minutes after we left, it turns on by itself as we were coming back up the stairs. These guys came up about 30 seconds later. So it was definitely something where it's like, if it was trying to get that charge from those batteries, it would turn on within the first minute or two.
Yeah.
But yeah, 60 minutes later, I was like, wow, I didn't even know it was up there. I'm watching the footage. I'm like, what is that?
Oh. So tell me about the process. Like, do you all go in? Do you guys talk to an owner or a rep if it's a public building, or do you just try to get the history? Do you try to find out if the person's full of it? Or, I mean, how does this work? Do you try to get history of the home, or do you try to just not know as much as possible and walk in there and see for yourselves?
Honestly, it's kind of a mix. So we'll start off by, a lot of the times, I've done some research to just find sites in the area, and it'll take some Google digging, and there are some paranormal investigations have become relatively popular. So there are places that specifically are open just for people to come in and rent it out and do this. So, I mean, that's, the internet's a great resource. I couldn't imagine doing this 30 years ago, like just calling random, word of mouth. And so it'll start off with me or sometimes Steve reaching out to a place, just saying, okay, do you offer private paranormal investigations? There'll be some back and forth. We'll work out a date, and then we usually don't go to the place until the scheduled date, because oftentimes Steve works different shifts. I work different shifts. With kids, trying to get a night for an investigation is tough enough to nail down. So it's we usually just get together when we finally go to the hunt. So we'll get there, and it is usually the owner we're talking with, and a lot of times, like we don't want to know, okay, this spot in the hallway, there's always something here, or excuse me, this bedroom is super active. We like to know the history of the building. We like to know what has happened in the past, but we try and not get too many specifics. And there are even members of our group that, if we're walking around with the owner and they're taking us to different spots of the house, some group members, they'll just stay back and just kind of sit in a room and not even hear any of it, and just let the vibe take them wherever they feel like, okay, something's drawing me to this room. And then what we'll kind of do is, okay, well, if that person's feeling something in that specific area, they might talk to one of us who went through the house with the owner, and we're like, okay, that's interesting because, maybe this happened here in this room or something like that. So it's kind of a mix, and it honestly, it's place by place too. Like we'll go to some places, the Bergen house, it's literally a house. There's not a lot
we drove past the driveway when we first
went. Yeah, it's so far, it's back in the woods, and the people were great there, and but it's a house. But then we'll go to other places.
Like for example, the Polish cadets, right?
Oh, there's a
so we didn't even I've never heard ghost stories about this place. I was just driving by because it's a place in Black Rock in Buffalo, a little bit, North Buffalo area, right off the 198. And I just had a vibe when I was driving by it. I was like, I bet there's some history to that building. And we just decided to go into the bar one night.
Yeah.
And we talked to the owners, and they're like, oh my God, this happens. And they were like so excited that someone came in and asked them about it. So they told us a whole bunch of ghost stories. And we're like, do you guys mind if we come check this out? And they invited us right in. They were super welcoming. And what's strange, they told us the story about this guy that passed away in the 80s, early 90s there that loved rock and roll, right? And they sometimes DJs would be playing a wedding, and they'd be playing pop music, and all of a sudden AC/DC or something comes on, and the DJs can't figure it out. So they thought that was attributed to this guy. Well, what's weird is we're sitting in the first level by the bar, and Mike and Jay were upstairs, and me and Greg are talking, and all of a sudden we hear whistling, and I'm like, what is that? And he's like, that's Patience. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, Patience by Guns N' Roses. Someone's whistling it. And I was just like, but the jukebox is off. So I went up, I went to the owner's room because they have a quarters there. They were out cold. There was no sounds coming from their room. The whistling was still going. There was nothing outside. There was no drums or accompaniment. Someone was whistling it. We caught it on camera. It's on our Polish Cadets episode.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah. So yeah. Mike didn't hear it. He came downstairs, and when they came downstairs, it stopped. So we're like, sometimes you just wander into it, and you're just,
yeah. But that was a definitely a different situation, because more often than not, it's more like it's a process thing, and you go, and that's kind of the vibe. And we've worked with a lot of great people in their facilities, and some places they'll just be like, all right, we know you guys, and we're just going to take off, so just lock the door on your way out. And Some people are, they might follow us around and, which whatever, it's their place. We're the guests. So,
Mhm.
we try and be respectful of wherever we are.
Some people reach out to us for help, like Tammy Joe's
Oh yeah.
situation.
Yeah. We've had,
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if you guys have had anybody call you up and say, "Hey, I've got something going on here. Can you?"
this one, actually two.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's been a couple times. Most recently, it was actually somebody that used to work with Steve, and they were just having a lot of issues with some spirits bothering this woman's grandson and bothering her. She would hear sounds, and
She'd wake up in the middle of the night to, what was it? Yeah, it was yelling at her.
it was
Hey,
it was
get
something
up.
right in her face, like yelling at her. And the
Jeez.
thing that just would kind of always, like, she had a wicker hamper towards the end of her bed, and if you push down on like something that's wicker, you can hear that crackling. And she said she would often hear it would be like somebody sitting on that and just watching her. And it was just
We got some good stuff out of that. I'm still working on that episode. It takes a while to go through all the footage, but
that was
yeah.
actually an interesting situation, because we brought in a friend of ours who, what would you call
Heather is a psychic. Yeah.
we brought in a psychic because
we don't have like, we're just normal guys. Like he said, he's got a degree in math. I work at a casino. And we don't, I'm not a psychic. I
Right.
think psychics exist. I think 99% of the people that say they're psychic aren't really psychic.
yeah, I think it's a gift that some people do have. And I believe this woman, we collaborated with her this time, because we went there. It was just a couple of us the first time to see, okay, let's see what we can get out of this. And
Because the concern was something demonic or something negative.
yeah.
Right. Especially when there's a kid involved too. I mean, it's
Oh yeah, and I think he was like 4 or 5. So I mean, it's a small kid, and my
Yeah.
son is 6, so like I can relate easily, and just like anything, like I automatically, I'll put myself in that situation. So
sure.
we were at, and when we went, just our group, we tried to get some answers, and we're like, okay, maybe we got some answers, and if you can do this and just kind of ignore it or tell it to go away. But then things actually got worse. We made things worse, apparently,
Oh.
because the activity ramped up pretty good.
Now,
So that's
do you guys provoke at all, or do you generally steer clear of that?
No, what we found out later is that we didn't actually make it worse. Is that spirits are essentially drawn to her, is what the psychic let us know. She has gifts. This woman whose house it was that we were investigating, and that's what was happening was the spirits were trying to communicate with her. And actually, we got some voices, very loud, like our level voices, recorded on camera from a room where nobody was in. We went in there afterwards. There's nobody there. And it's
Wow.
a great box activity and all that stuff. So yeah, so that's what the psychic was able to bring to light is maybe we woke up something that was a latent ability in her. I don't want to say it sounds like X-Men. Sounds like I'm talking about X-Men.
Right.
But yeah, essentially that's what happened is she had a gift to communicate. These things were trying to communicate with her, but she felt a lot more comfortable because Heather, the psychic, our friend, who she owns Greystone Manor up in Gasport, she was able to bring some comfort because she let Tammy Jo know that there was family members that were protecting her as well. So she shouldn't be nervous about it. So after that, everything kind of made more sense. The answers that we got on the spirit box, the things like that, and she felt a lot better about the situation. So now she's looking at how does she hone in those types of things.
Right. Huh. Man. Whew. That's that's intense.
It's scary. I know, and it was always something like the house that I currently live in. My wife and I, we moved into 3 years ago, and since I've been doing the paranormal stuff, like when I knew I was moving, that was going to be one of my things. Like, what happens if because we were looking for our forever house, like we don't want to keep moving. So what if we move somewhere and a month in, something starts happening and like something like
Follows you home,
haunted or something. Like I was so worried about that. So, if somebody asks us to come in and help, like that's your place to live. Like if we can provide some sort of comfort, like we want to do whatever we can, and knowing that we kind of met our limits with it, help using our friend, with the psychic abilities to come and help us. That
I think there's a lot to be said that even if you go to a location, if you don't find anything, but the owner, the people living there or whatever are clearly shaken up or feel like something's going on, but if you can at least talk to them and comfort them, you know, I think that's huge right there in itself.
Right, right.
So that's a win, right? But yeah, huh. So, okay, so I was gonna get to psychics because I guess I'm on the fence about it because, like you, Steve, I tend to think that, you know, 99% of people are full of it, or, you know,
Right.
maybe believe that they have this gift, but I don't know. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so you guys tend to believe that, yes, there's a select individuals out there who do have, I don't know if you call them a gift or a curse, or maybe a
Yeah.
little bit of both.
It depends, I guess.
You know?
It depends on what person you would ask, I guess.
So I read a little bit of a book, or a little bit of a book. I read a book about it that gave me like a little bit of insight into kind of what the generally accepted means of psychics are as far as communicating with the spirit world. From what it sounds like, is that they don't directly communicate with the spirits where it's like we're talking right now.
Yeah.
Essentially, whatever their strongest senses, whether it's smell, touch, sight, hearing, the spirits that there, I guess there's 4 spirit guides that surround everybody is what this belief system is. And the spirit guides communicate with the outside spirits. They act as a protective barrier, and they will give the psychic clues. So it won't be like something like, hey, you know, Mike has a Jaws poster in his room. You know, it's more like it'll show a quick flash of something that will try to communicate that message in whatever sense Mike makes most sense of things. So it might be an image of a shark, or if it's like, you know, if you hear sound most, it might be like crashing waves or in a scream. You know, it could. That's the way that the book explained how psychics communicate with the spirit world.
Sounds like sensory overload.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What now? Whether that's true or not, you know, I don't know. I
Sure.
tried to exercise those types of things with me, but I was stopping myself because I didn't know what I was making up subconsciously versus what could possibly be out there. So I was overthinking it, and I was just like, you know what, it's not meant for me. Not meant for me.
Sure. So I should probably say this too. You guys produce your own videos, make your own episodes.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome.
We used to kind of get together and go through evidence all together as a group. Now with kids, you know, it's in schedules, and I work a couple jobs. I'm involved with my son's school. So, I mean, time is, you know, everybody's got their things. So, I mean, you know, Steve does the editing and the evidence review and the clips of it. He does, he's our guy behind.
Sometimes I'll come across something, and like, for example, the video I sent you of the Iron Island one, I'll be like, oh my God, Mike, you got to get over here right now.
Yeah.
You got to see this. I can't believe it.
Huh. Well, yeah. So I mean, kudos to you, man. 'Cause that's it. Looks like, you know, a produced TV show. It's really cool. It's I like the way you guys did that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, and I could tell how time consuming that must be. So good on you, man. And I hope that this gets more people to watch it too. You know, yeah, right. So demonology, BS or real? A little bit of both. Who knows?
I think it's right in the center. I think you know, you hit it on mark. At least for me, I think it's real. I think people can summon things that, and you know, I have I'll send you the link. I did a blog. I'm still kind of doing it, called The Paranormal Paradox. And I'm a big like Stephen Hawking's fan, so I like read like a lot of his stuff. So he does an analogy of a fish in a bowl, you know, and how a fish would define the characteristics of its universe, and how those definitions of its universe and the physics that would work with the fish would be different than ours, you know, from our definition and perspective. And I drew up this graph, and it essentially had 2 circles. Like, here's our world, here's the spirit world, right? We all exist in one universe, in one plane. And essentially this area right in between is that observable phenomena where we can interact with it. And I think that when you're talking about things that might have never been human, I think they could definitely exist in that plane. I think there's things that we don't know about, just like we don't know about what species are at the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
And it's scary to think about those things, because some of those things, they don't need and Mike brought up a good point earlier. What ties a ghost to a building? You know, the restaurant that he worked in, it was Swiss Chalet. It was on Niagara Falls Boulevard in Amherst. It no longer stands there. It's gone. All the Swiss Chalets are out of the United States for whatever reason. They're only in Canada. But the pieces of wood and the steel that held that place together, they're in some dump somewhere, or they were recycled. Like, how come that building they went to, you know, how come that's not haunted? You know, what is it that keeps a person there? Or, you know, the scary thing about demons is that they're tied to humans. They're tied to, you know, living things like a parasite as opposed to a building. And that's the thing about it.
Well, yeah. And I mean, there's multiple, I don't know if phases is the correct term, but like, isn't there, I forget what they are, but there's like infestation and stuff like that, but it's like a process. It's not just like one day, boom, somebody becomes, you know, possessed or whatever it may be, but it can sometimes take years and years, right? Right.
Always starts with the invitation, though. That's the thing, is it's all, you read all these stories, and like one of my favorite books is, and it's absolutely chilling. And everybody knows Lorraine and Ed Warren, but they wrote with a gentleman, I forget his name, but it's called The Demonologist. It talks about their experiences, their real life experiences with some of their cases. It mentions some of the stuff that they touch on in the Conjuring universe, but I mean, this was written in the 1980s, early 90s. And that book is absolutely frightening. It's absolutely frightening. And it talks about, you know, all these cases, they start with someone inviting something in. And it always, that's the scary thing when we go to places and we try to communicate with things, we're opening up the lines of communication. You don't know what can come through.
Right. I was just going to say, it could be unintentional too, right? It doesn't have to be, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Most of the times it is. It's someone wants to use the Ouija board to talk to a spirit of a dead boy they think is in their house. And it opens up a gateway to something. There might have never been anything in their house, but something in that globe that we were talking about is drawn to it, and all of a sudden, bad things happen.
It is. It's scary, and you know, one of our members, Steve mentioned him a couple times. His name is Greg, and there's always been what we've believed and he's believed is a spirit with him, and some of the stories that he has provided us have been they've been chilling, just the things that have happened to him, whether it's he's in his car and somebody's in his back seat or something like that.
That's an interesting one, because it was I think it was up at Route 31, which is over by the Tuscarora Nation. And there's a lot of stories about I think Black Spring Road. There's a road up there, something like that is the name of it, and that's a very native thing that happened to him, is that he saw something demonic in his back seat. He had to pull over and call his father. Yeah.
And he's somebody in our group that
he's probably one of the most skeptical.
He's more skeptical than us, where if somebody is telling a story, you can kind of see him. It takes a lot to get him to believe that something is truly paranormal. Which is fine, you know, that's how he gets. So for something to scare him as much to get out of his car and call for a ride, like those are the things that make me believe that yes, something demonic is there.
Sure. So I guess what does one do in that situation, right? Like, so Greg has a spirit either in him or following him, or something is going on.
So the spirit following Greg is a protector that we find out. So, but in a situation where it's like, you know, possession, it's weird because, you know, you'll have someone that might be indigenous, right? And they might have a belief system for drawing or casting out that spirit. And my fiance, her family comes from Six Nations up in Canada. And her family's involved in some of that stuff in the traditional Native American beliefs up there. And it's completely separate from Catholicism, but you know, a priest gets sent in and they do their thing, right? And it works, you know, sometimes. Same thing with, you know, someone in an indigenous culture. They send in, you know, whoever it is that takes care of those things. So it's weird. It's maybe like, it can't be a single belief system, right? It maybe has to be the energy of that.
Sure, yeah.
You know, that draws it out, something positive that pushes this away or repels it like a magnet. Those were my kind of thoughts about it is.
Well, yeah, because even in different belief systems, you still have commonality within them generally, right? I mean, so I guess, yeah, there's got to be something in there that makes sense. Okay. this is kind of a cool part. You sent me some evidence. You mind if I share my screen with you and we talk about it for a second?
Go for it.
Go ahead.
All right.
Yeah. One of them was one of them was the one I called Mike. I was like, "You gotta get over here."
Yeah. So I was gonna do. Sorry, man. I'm trying to
No, you're good.
figure this out here. Here we go. Boom. All right. So can you guys see it?
There we go. Yep.
All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and play it. I might play it just a couple of times. That way people who are watching can take a look. And then just so you guys know, I'll plug you guys. I'll put all your information, where people can find you. If somebody needs help, where they can contact you, blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah, totally. No, we appreciate it. Same with you. I mean, we'll tell everybody to listen to you. So.
yeah. All right. So here we go. So you sent me this. Now this is at the haunted Virgin House. Or no, this is Iron Island. I'm sorry. Yep.
Well, Iron Island, just to give a little bit of background, is it's in like the South Buffalo area. It's a little bit north of South Buffalo, and it is an area that was really heavily trafficked by trains, and that's why they call the area it's Lovejoy, the Lovejoy area. But that's why the Buffalo Central Terminal and train tracks are really like important to this area. And Iron Island itself was a church originally, and then they turned it into a funeral. It was built in the late 1800s. Then they turned it into a funeral home in the first half of the 20th century, and it was a funeral home all the way from maybe like the 1940s and 50s, all the way up to the 2000s, where it was then donated to the Iron Island Preservation Society, who run it as a museum now, a military museum. And they got, even if it wasn't haunted, they got amazing things in there that tie to Buffalo's past.
And it's literally in the middle of a neighborhood. There's houses on both sides. Behind it, across the street, it's smack dab, like right in a neighborhood.
No, it's crazy. So many soldiers for World War II went on the tracks to, their training camps and all that stuff right past that area. And it's got such a history. So Iron Island actually is famous for being haunted in not only Buffalo, but nationally. Ghost hunters, Jay and Grant actually went there too, as well.
Oh, okay.
So there too. So it's a really cool place.
We've probably been there about a half dozen times.
We feel as haunted as it is, we feel so at home there. We love it.
There's an energy, but it's a very relaxed and calm energy, but we always get a lot of evidence.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to play this and then, we'll talk about it.
Yep.
All right. Man, that's
yeah.
Wild. I'll play it a couple times just so people can.
Sure. Yeah. So our friend Mike's filming right now, and our friend Greg is taking pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike actually didn't see this when it happened.
Oh, okay. So, all right, gotcha. So there was 3 of you?
2 of us in the room. I was back at the command center. Yep.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I never watch it on a screen this big. That's even better.
That is just, all right.
It's pretty crazy. So to take you back a couple of years before that, we had seen this with our very own eyes. One of our first experiences, that was my first time seeing a shadow person, was in Iron Island in the next room over. And Mike was in the hallway. And at the same time, I saw it run into the room I was. He saw it running down the hallway. And we said it almost at the same time. We're like, did you see? Where did it go? Yeah. And we saw it with our own eyes, but we didn't have the equipment to capture it. So to see that on camera, I was like, oh my God, that's what we saw with our own eyes.
So did you see it when it happened? Or was this back when you were, later on when you were doing your evidence review?
So this is maybe like the 4th time that we were there. So Mike did not see it at the time. I don't know if he was maybe turned away from the camera or not looking at the LCD at the moment.
Right. Well, still, I mean, that's a small screen and that's a quick flash. So
Right.
Exactly. So yeah, I just happened to be going through the footage, and we film on 2 cameras that are IR cameras, and we film on 4 wireless DVR surveillance cameras. So 5 hours, 6 hours of footage per camera. So it takes a long time to go through. And so when I saw it was just like, you know, the needle in the haystack, and you're like,
Yeah.
those are the things that you're just like so excited about. And I showed it to some of our friends who really don't believe in this or don't think that we're wasting our time, and they're like, okay, maybe you guys aren't.
And it's funny because, you know, when Steve mentioned, you know, a second ago when we were standing in 2 different spots and saw the same thing, a different shadow figure, it's stuff like that, because I mentioned how, you know, there's a lot of times where we try and debunk whatever we see or hear. And with me, like with glasses, it's tough. I'll get glares all the time. So for 2 people to be standing in different parts of the room and be able to see the exact same thing happen, like it's just that sense of validation that like this wasn't just a random thing that happened, or I'm not crazy. It really gives credence to what we're searching for, what we're doing, and it sounds stupid and corny, but it's like an adrenaline rush. Like when something like that happens, when this evidence happens to us, like if something touches me or we hear something like that, or you know, it's what keeps us going for this, because otherwise it's wasted money on rental fees and equipment and gas and all this stuff. And
Like I wasn't even there, and it's an adrenaline rush for me to see that. Like
yeah,
so I can only imagine what it's like for you. You know.
and people ask me, you know, doesn't this stuff freak you out? And when I tell them, you know, no, it just if something happens to me, it makes me want to look further. Like if we hear something in the next room, it's not we gotta get away from here. It's, all right, let's go in that room and see what's in there. Try and find what's in there. It's you know, if you would have talked to me before I had my experience, I probably would have been like a lot of people and would have been like, no, I want nothing to do with this. And but now it's the days leading up to when we have an investigation, because we'll probably go on, I don't know, one every couple months or so. So when we do it, it's like I really look forward to it, because it's just one, just hanging out with friends, but 2, then just the opportunity for us to get, you know, maybe we got this shadow person, maybe something does happen that we just can't believe in. It's
I just want to see that full-bodied apparition. That's the holy grail, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I want to, but again, I'm jumping way forward when I ask this. Like, ultimately, what is the end game, right? So you get all this evidence, you're collecting it, but where do you go from there? What can you do with it? Is there? I mean, I'm in Rochester. There's tons of universities around me. There's tons of universities around you. You guys got UB, stuff like that there. I mean, is there physicists or professors that you can send this stuff to have them take a look? I mean, does it? I understand that it's not. You can't necessarily repeat it, right? So that's, you know.
So I was just thinking about this the other day because I was reading up on shadow people on various articles about it, and one of the big beliefs that a shadow person is, as far as a scientific explanation goes, is that it is some sort of induced hallucination, right? That's usually the go-to for a shadow person. So when we see you know, at the same time, it's like, oh, hey, you know, it's not a hallucination.
Well, yeah,
but I was just thinking about that.
That's not a hallucination.
Right.
You know?
But I was thinking about that scientists' biggest essentially fail of ghosts and paranormal, why they can't be real, is that you cannot replicate a paranormal experience in a laboratory setting, right? And I like to write. I write fiction, and I write like dark fantasy and horror, things like that. And I was like, well, wouldn't that be a cool concept if you had a scientist that was trying to replicate something in a laboratory for a paranormal experience to disprove its existence, and something goes wrong and something happens, right?
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that the other day that you mentioned that. Yeah, I was like, oh, you'd be like Egon, spores. But something goes wrong. He's a non-believer. But yeah,
rest in peace, Egon.
Yeah.
But I don't know. If I met someone in the field and they were interested, I'd probably love to have them take a look, you know, and maybe come with us and all that stuff. And
yeah, you know, I've never thought about, and we've never really talked about what is our end game. You know, it's been, you know, I mentioned this a couple times, just life is hectic with kids and family. And if, you know, our time together is limited, so do we want to go into a bar and spend $6 on a beer and, you know, trying to shout over loud music? Or do we want to do it go into an 1800s farmhouse that could potentially have a ghost in it. And just for our group of friends, it's the latter. And it's, there isn't necessarily an end game. We're not trying to make a career out of this. We're amateurs. We're not making money.
Honestly, it all started because we started going to places because we were just interested in ghosts, and we tell people, and they'd be like, "No, get out of here."
Yeah.
And then so that was in the days of flip phones. So I was like, "No, you got to listen to this recording,"
Yeah.
So then YouTube came around, and it was kind of like, okay, well, maybe we can show people what we're experiencing. So that's really kind of how everything evolved, and that's kind of how it's continuing to evolve. And there's a few episodes I'm working on right now. Like we went to the Knickerbocker Hotel in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
That one we're working on right now. We're working on the episode about the house that we were telling you about, where the lady was having these experiences at night. We got called to a place not called, but we got to check out a place in Forestville. We were the first paranormal team to get to investigate it, right next to a cemetery, and we're working on that one. That one was really cool. And then we're working on a return to Greystone Manor, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
We're working on this Iron Island episode because the clip you saw is from an unfinished episode that we're working on right now, which the one girl that comes with us, Steph, she's able to kind of pick up on things. So she had some hits there that were like, whoa, like kind of even scared her. So
But it's funny because, as we talk about, why do we do this, and like how long do we want to keep doing this? And, we're in our late 30s now, and we've been doing this for almost a decade. And we actually, on our last investigation, we've had, I guess you could call them a couple duds in a row, where it was okay, it's kind of a low night. There's not much happening, and we talked about how it makes us either question, do we have it in us anymore? Like, are we interested in this anymore? Do we want to keep doing this? Do we want to spend the time and resources to keep doing this? And
then you get a shadow person to run by, and the answer is yes, you do.
That's exactly where I was going. It was, whether it's watching an old episode of something we've experienced, or just thinking about.
Or do you want to talk about what happened at Heather's at the end that kind of got us all excited?
I don't remember.
Oh,
what?
So we were at Greystone Manor. It was recent. It was the beginning of October, and that's when we were kind of feeling that vibe. And it was pretty active there all night. But at the end of the night, we were downstairs in the basement, and Greg was watching the cameras upstairs, and they have audio. And we could feel that something was like watching us from this basement like area. You could feel it. If I didn't even want to move, like I was just, it was strange. But at the same time, we didn't hear it at the time. But I said something along the lines, "Will you come over here? We want to see you. Show us yourself." And in the camera upstairs, Greg was watching it, and he heard it go, "No," like that.
Wow.
So it was pretty cool. So he called us up. When we got up there, we're like, so we filmed it. We put it on our Facebook page. So there's a clip of it, but that'll be worked into an episode because there's a bunch of stuff that we brought our mom. Our mom's Catholic stuff, and she's a Sunday school teacher. So we brought her to Greystone Manor, and it was interesting. She was so frightened because we were in Heather's office, and just, we're getting some good dowsing rod session stuff going. We're hearing some stuff. You hear footsteps, and there's nobody there, and things like that. And Mike, myself, and Heather heard someone whisper right next to my mom, and my mom didn't hear it. And her face when we told her, she was so freaked out.
Because this was only the second time she'd ever come with us somewhere, and she's not used to that, and I love, like, just seeing that reaction, like the way that it affected somebody. It's not just somebody brushing off. It's somebody that truly feels it and believes it, and that's what kind of keeps us going, and that's what'll keep me going whenever I'm like, I just, I don't know, do we want to keep going? How much more do we want to do with this? And then, it'll be times like this, or it'll be just those quick moments that just make me want to do it again. And
sure.
It's we're never going to be Ghost Adventures. We're not going to have our own show or anything like that. It's at the end of the day, it's just, this is how we like spending our free time, honestly.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's a passion and a hobby, right? I mean,
yeah. And I think to do this, that's a good word to use, just the passion of it. And it's not something, there will be public ghost hunts, especially around Halloween, where you buy a ticket and a group of 50 people, and whatever, people like going to that, and that's fun for them. And to drive to Pennsylvania or wherever, the Pennsylvania border on a cold January night through the snow, like to hopefully maybe get some sounds on an audio recording, like, that fire and that passion, it has to be there. Otherwise, you're just an idiot.
Right.
So, are you familiar with Rolling Hills Asylum? Have you
Yeah,
ever been
yeah, over in East Bethany. Yeah. I used to live over by there. So,
there? Did you?
yeah.
So if you ever get an opportunity, you got to check it out. And my story for what that I go back to when I'm just like, maybe we are just, it's too much in our head. Maybe we're just like really like
Forcing it.
thinking it. The story I always go back to is we're at Rolling Hills. It was maybe our second or third time there. There's this long hallway called the Shadow Hallway.
Mhm.
And earlier in the night, we were there with our aunt. We thought we saw this, head peeking out of this doorway down the hallway. And we're all sitting there, we're watching it. We're like, we went in the room afterwards. There's nothing there. So we went up later in the night. And one of the stories that Rolling Hills has is that there's this gentleman with gigantism, Roy, that roams the grounds, and that he's a protective, friendly spirit there, but very interactive with people, right? So I wasn't even thinking of that. We went back up to the third floor. There was a flashlight session going on with another group. Mike and my Aunt Cindy went to that group. I went about 40 feet away. I was trying to see if I could recreate it. I was like, maybe it was our eyes playing tricks on us. I don't know. So then all of a sudden, out of the peripheral vision on my left side, I see this black shape. And then right on my ear, it whispers. And it either whispered like, hey, you're Steve. I thought it was him. Hey, Steve, let's go over here. Let's move on. Try not to disturb the other people. So I turn around, I turn on my flashlight, and there's nothing there. Well, at the same time, my Aunt Cindy, who is like behind me about 40 feet, she goes, what just came out of that room behind you? And I was like, what did you see? She goes, something came out of that room. It was so tall, it blocked you out completely. And then when you turn around and you turn on your flashlight, she goes, it disappeared. And I was like, you saw it too? I was like, I saw it. Those are the things. It's like, you get so excited. You're like, okay, it's not just me. There's something more to it.
So I want to touch on that just for a second. You had said that prior to this, maybe sometimes you kind of question yourself, or you're wondering like, okay, am I just seeing this or something? I like that. I think that adds to your credibility because you're questioning yourself, right? And you're trying to make yourself better, or make sure that you're being rational. I don't know. I like that.
And I think that it goes back to just kind of our scientific thinking, our logical thinking, and how we process just any sort of information. And I think that definitely helps. And it's that thought is always there, but there's just something that keeps us going with it. And it's tough to explain to somebody who isn't passionate about it and doesn't want, just doesn't have an interest in it, but they're just a passion.
My friend from the Bronx, he says it's toilet paper. That's what it is. We're seeing toilet paper when the orbs and stuff. Yeah.
Oh man. So I've had you guys on for about an hour. I don't know what your time constraints are here, but I don't want to.
None.
Okay, cool. So I definitely got a few more questions for you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Dowsing rods. Can you explain those to me? I don't really know much about them other than they use them to find water.
Well, the thought is it works like a pendulum in that it's almost like the flashlights. It's something that allows anything in that paranormal plane to be able to communicate a little bit easier with us instead of, I actually, in my paranormal paradox, I drew this chart and it was like, okay, we have the most frequency of these occurrences. These must be the easiest for whatever it is that's trying to communicate with us. And then, next up with the apparition, full-bodied apparition being the most difficult because it rarely happens, right? It's almost like a triangle, like a food pyramid. So we find that a lot of times that dowsing rods or the spirit box are low-level type things where it takes a minimal or the least amount of energy as far, just based on the amount of hits that we get. But dowsing rods work like a pendulum. And the idea is just something easy for a spirit to manipulate. And you can make them out of, to me, I don't think the metal really matters. Some people are very conscious of the metal because of the conductivity of the metal and all that stuff, but that's a person's personal beliefs. But essentially, sometimes, you put them in your hand and you relax yourself and you kind of meditate. And then sometimes they'll just swing. A lot of times they'll just swing and they don't do anything. They go whichever way they want, whichever way gravity pulls them, whichever way, whatever. But then sometimes when things start to kick up, it feels like a finger's there pushing on it. You could feel the push. And that's when you feel the energy. That's when things start to kick up. And that's when you'll start getting the answers, and you'll ask them, we ask them to always go back to a neutral position to reset itself, almost like I don't know, like a clock, I guess you can say. And then, because some people will just go straight from question to question to question, we'll ask it to reset itself every time so that we know we're getting the correct answer. And, we'll ask them to open the rods wide for yes and cross them for no. And we can do all these different things with it, but you'll feel something pushing on it sometimes.
What is, out of all your equipment, I feel like I might already know the answer to this, but I'm still going to ask. So you have all of this equipment, and then you also just have your five senses, maybe six in some cases. Mm-hmm. What to you is the most reliable?
Well, I would say, just because wireless networks are not always reliable in some of our locations that we go to, I would say, and probably the answer you already knew, is our bodies.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to the vibe of a place. Sometimes if some people are just jerks, I go back to the Simpsons reference where they're talking about the elephants and Homer's headbutting the guy, but some people, they just don't want to interact with people because they're not kind to them or they're not respectful. And we always try to be respectful. I work in the guest service industry, and it's always about just being kind to someone and polite. And
right.
So I try to at least incorporate that and show respect and
well, I think at the end of the day it matters too, because like Steve said, our bodies are, I don't know how else to pick up on, like I've felt things touch me, I felt things grab my hand, I felt things push me.
St. Barnabas house, remember you walked into that thing?
Yeah, and I don't know how to get that. Like if I have a camera and I get pushed, okay, something, you can see me fall or whatever, but I guess there's less things that can cause interference. Okay, the dowsing rods, okay, maybe there's a little draft in that room and they're blowing a certain way. Or, there's a spirit box, which is we didn't talk about that, but that's the radio waves that
the two radios going side by side sweeping.
Okay. So it's kind of like, I don't know, how would you explain it?
It's essentially two radios. You can make them go forward or backwards, but they go simultaneously, and you can sweep through the channels at like a super fast rate, from 500 stations per minute to, I think it goes down to 100 stations per minute, and it will continuously do that. And the idea is that spirits can manipulate radio waves to communicate through that with words.
So you would basically ask a question and hope to get an answer out of the sweeps of the radio. So like, you'll hear these different radio sounds as it's going through these.
It's kind of like white noise, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Along those lines.
Yeah. We've only had success with it maybe a handful of times, but that just goes, like you said, it goes to the credibility of it. Right. When it actually does happen. We brought it out every time and had a successful session every time.
But the thing is, like, if we're doing a spirit box session and, okay, we ask, okay, what's your name? And it says Dan or something like that. And it's too easy. Steve mentioned this exact phrase before, the power of suggestion. So if, okay, I heard Dan, Steve heard something, a mumble, somebody else heard nothing, like, but then they're like, okay, you know what, that did sound like Dan. And it's just, okay, that's not lending itself to solving what we just heard. Where if, my own, so that piece of equipment can be tough to, it can be good when you get very clear, direct answers, but it's too easy to misinterpret something that comes out of it.
Going back to kind of what we were talking about too with the bodies is we were talking about the spirit things and the different senses. And, for different people, like Mike is very touch oriented. He feels a lot of things like like he'll walk into the spirit at St. Barnabas. You can see him on video. He walks into there's nothing there on the camera, but he walks into something and he feels a lot of touch, like things tugging his pant leg at Rolling Hills and things like that. I hear things a lot. Like I'm very music oriented. I love music. And I will like hear things and other people will be like, I didn't hear that. And then we'll catch it later on audio. Another member like Steph, she's very feeling oriented. She's in HR. So I think she's a like empath by nature,
right?
Which is just empathetic to people's, their predispositions, but she definitely will walk through a building and she'll feel things as far as like feelings go. So we all have kind of like our own unique ways our bodies tune into things. And it's kind of interesting to see who does what, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, our bodies are
a wonderland.
Our bodies are a wonderland, as John Mayer said.
Have you guys been to Fort Niagara?
No.
Not to do a ghost hunt. We reached out to them, but we've been there before. Yeah.
I mean, okay. I was just wondering. I've always heard tales of that place since I was a kid, so just figured I'd see if you guys have maybe ever visited.
Actually, a cool fort that we did go to was it Fort Ontario?
Fort Ontario, up in Oswego.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it was a very cool setup because I mean it's not huge, but we had the whole place to ourselves. You know, it's right on the lake, and you know there are underground tunnels and there are different buildings in it, and well, Fort Niagara we haven't been able to investigate personally, but
I reached out to them. They said just at this time that's not something that they're allowing.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Gotcha.
Sometimes we'll reach out to a place and they'll be, you know, I'll drive by a place. There's this restaurant in Amherst and it's like, it's, what is it? The Washington House? I forget the name of it. It's
Washington Square.
It's right next to like the mill there. And I know it's haunted because it's like got to be one of the first buildings in Amherst. And we reached out to the owners there and they're like, oh, we appreciate it. Because anytime I go there and eat, my fiance always gets annoyed because I'll ask the staff about ghost stories. Was this place haunted? And then some of them will be, oh my God, you won't believe this. And they'll tell us this story. But yeah, they declined politely.
So
we try.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, in like that, you know, we try and steer away from those. Restaurants are hard because, you know, they're business. A lot of them are open till 10, 11 o'clock at night. Right. People are there till midnight. So, you know, it's a liability thing. So to come across new places like that, it can get challenging, but it's worth it, you know, once we do our digging and find history on places.
So when you guys go to, let's say you're going to a private residence, right? And you're talking to the owner about their experience. How do you I'm going to try to say this as politely as possible. How do you go about vetting them, I guess? Does that make sense? Like, do you ever walk in there and your BS meter just pegs, or you know what I mean?
There's a couple places we've gone to when people are feeding us stuff, and it's like, yeah, you know, like, I don't know, you know, it's built on a cemetery that was then a Native American burial ground that was then this and this, and you know, and you're hearing all these tropes from, you know, horror movies.
Right.
Yeah, there's a couple places that we walked into like that, and but I think there's history in every building. I think for me personally, there's a lot more paranormal things going on than people really kind of notice. And for me, I think there's a lot of historical buildings, a lot of history that can be picked up on by us, the living, that is. And I think even if a person's feeding you a line, you know, there might be something legitimate underneath that maybe they don't even know about.
Yeah, and that's all part of the process too. Like when we research these places, you know, we're gonna come across places that are doing this, and you know, this is their living. They're renting out a facility to have people come in and look for ghosts, and that's what they do. So okay, maybe they are, you know, feeding us some lines where at the same time, okay, maybe this place really does have some paranormal stuff going on, but we try and get a feel for it as much as possible through, you know, our research beforehand. And we have come across places, you know, in research that we just might not want to reach out to because it's just, it just doesn't feel right. And you know, maybe we didn't feel a good vibe talking to the owner or something like that. So we have, you know, to your point, we have come across things like that, but we try, like Steve said, we're as respectful as possible. And we always tell this to a place when we go in, whether there's spirits there or not. When we're doing an investigation, we always say, you know, we're guests, we're here, you know, this is we're guests to you. So, you know, we don't want to conjure up anything. We don't want to be rude, you know, it's, and whether we feel we're in a legitimate place or whether we feel it's somebody BSing us, we're still gonna act the same way.
And you know, in my line of work, I'm a director of security for a casino in Niagara Falls in Buffalo, and I've seen a lot of stuff in the real world. You know, that's
I'm sure.
paranormal. So when and I've been doing it for 16 years now, and so when some of the stuff said, like, I do try to give people credence, because sometimes perception is reality, and it might be real to them, even if what they're experiencing something legitimate, and we try to, you know, maybe reel that back in sometimes and explain stuff as best as we can, because there might be legitimate explanations. Because when people are afraid, sometimes you forget that. You take out the rationale, you know?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to go back to, just for a moment, the clip there of the shadow person that you have. Steve, you're sitting there, you're reviewing the evidence. You go, holy hell, I got to call Mike or whatever, or you got to come up here, down here and see this. Where does it go from there? Now, are you guys talking to each other saying, okay, this is where I was, you know, this is the equipment that we had, you know, he wasn't moving, or like, how do you go about that? How do you go through that process to make sure that it wasn't somebody
Probably
else?
actually pretty close to what you just described, where we try and recall, okay, Mike, you were in this chair, Steve was standing over here, and it's a lot of it is what you just described, and just trying to recreate.
Some of these places have IR cameras of their own, security systems. So we know where the spotlight is for that. Does it cast a shadow over here? We'll go back through like the older footage to try to see what it looks like when Greg stands up, or what it looks like when Mike stands up. And a lot of times I won't even call, I don't call him until I do that stuff.
Okay.
I don't once I rule all that stuff out, that's when I'm like, Mike, you got to get over here.
And we have like a group text with everybody in our group, and there'll be times where it'll just be a random whatever Sunday night, and Steve will say, all right, do you guys remember when we were at Iron Island and this happened? Do you remember hearing this at this time? Like, so there is a lot of communication, and, you know, that's one other great thing about having, you know, technological advances that we do right now, just being able to message each other like that. Like I said, doing this 30 years ago,
snail mail,
right.
Yeah, or like calling Steve up, or Steve calling us up, like every time he wanted to verify some information from a video. Like it's we pretty much just recreate.
Yeah, it's nice because I can send you the clip right now, like right then and there, and these guys can watch it on their phones and be like, no, that wasn't this.
Sure. You mind if I share my screen again? We check out some more of the Virgin House. All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see.
This one was the barn at the Bergen House.
Yeah. Let's see. Make sure I got this right.
What kind of beer are you drinking?
This is the leftovers of my Oktoberfest.
Nice.
Yeah. I always get sad when the Oktoberfest goes away.
And all the Christmas beers start coming out.
Yeah, you know, I'm not quite into all the Christmas beers, all the
not me either, yeah.
The nutmeg and stuff. It's not quite my thing. So let's see. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right, cool. So for anybody who's going to be watching this, look to the lower right in here. You're going to see something kind of interesting. Now, this goes on for, I think, about 8 minutes is what you guys said, right?
Yeah.
So we obviously won't play the whole 8 minutes, but...
So this clip that's online, too, is it contains a sped up version because it's easier to see when it's sped up. And also contains the full 8-minute version if people really wanted to kind of go through that, like if other paranormal groups. There's been a couple that reached out to us and checked it out.
Oh, is that right?
that have been to the Bergen house and were telling us about their experiences in the barn. So that was pretty cool.
Gotcha. Now, there are some things that you can see which is clearly dust, right? But that's not what we're talking about here.
Correct. Yeah, whatever's there is about the size of maybe a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller than a baseball, we're assuming, just based on everything that's around it. And really, it comes the easiest to see too and pick up on it is when the cat walks in.
Yeah, let's try to. Let's see.
I think it might be more towards the beginning.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, here it is.
So I initially I had slowed it down to watch the cat, and just because it I'll be watching it. You're looking for something different, and you can kind of see it right there.
Yeah.
And what we know as far as dust, I've watched over my time of watching all these different hunts. I've seen billions of dust particles go in front of the camera, as well as bugs. So this definitely, when you watch it at regular speed, you can see right now it's kind of streaking, going so quick. But at the regular speed, it definitely like that was like a bug that flew
right.
Yeah. And whatever this is, it lasted for 8 minutes. After I started watching it for a little bit, I'm like, that's weird. And then I went back a little bit, and I'm like, oh, it goes back further. And then I watched it. I was like, holy cow, this thing goes on for quite a while.
Yeah. So this one stumped me. I don't know, man. My gut reaction was, oh, it's a bug, but no, I don't. There's no. I don't think that's a bug.
It's transparent. The bugs will be, like you said, and like our thought process when I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, none of us are there right now. Like, is it a flashlight? And then I went back to some of the flashlight that Mike and Jay had when they were in the back there, and when they came out, and there was nothing that was anywhere near similar to what it could have been. We were all in the house anyways at that time. This was recording, we left it out to record while we were at our mobile command center.
It's interesting that the cat was interacting with it.
Yeah. The barn is probably the hot spot that we felt that night. The house was surprisingly cool as far as activity, but I mean, that's just one night, like we were talking about the tornado thing.
Right.
The next would be Tornado Alley.
Yeah.
The barn was the active place for us that night. Mike felt his camera get pushed that night while he was there. We had our camera lose power, Greg's camera lose power, and the spirit box lose power all within maybe about 10 or 15 minutes. And then,
fully charged or decent charge.
Yep, fully charged. Yeah, you can see whatever it is going back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I got nothing, gentlemen. I don't know.
Yeah, if someone says, is that a ghost, I would look and I would say, I don't know what that is, but it's not something that's normal. And what's do is I was reading I forget, I think it was the Haunted Atlas of Western New York by Amanda Woomer, and she, I think, recounted a story of people seeing black orbs or black thing, or like black circles around the barn area. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, I remember reading it somewhere. If it wasn't there, it was somewhere. But I was just like, oh, okay. I was like, well, that makes sense because this is infrared light. A lot of the colors are reversed. What would it look like, like with our eyes? Would it look white like it looks on camera, or is it devoid of color? Because when I'm wearing black shoes in that, my shoes look white. So it's a interesting thing to think about. I don't know what it would look like if we saw it with our own eyes.
So have you said that other people who have investigated reached out to you, and you showed. Has anybody else had any other suggestions of what that could possibly be?
The paranormal group suggested it was possibly the energy of a person that hung themselves there. That I don't know. I don't know if it's an energy associated with a person, if it's some sort of paranormal thing as far as this is a non-sentient thing. I don't know exactly what it could be.
No.
But it's definitely it's not normal to see that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so I'll put links to these clips for anybody who's interested in watching them. I suggest you do, because they're very interesting. Even if you're just listening to this audio, go over to YouTube. I'll put their channel on there, and you got to check them out. It's pretty rad. Orbs. What are orbs, gentlemen? Is it dust? Is it?
I've heard a lot of paranormal investigators say that orbs are nothing. Orbs are dust. They're bugs. They're nothing paranormal.
Mm.
Um,
We got a couple of interesting ones
but
though.
yeah, that's just it. Like it'll be like a lot of things where there might be a handful of times where something will happen. We think it's an orb, and it's just we can't explain it. We can't explain the directions it takes, or just the flow of it, or the shape, or the transparency of it. Because if it's in a room where there's dust flying around, if we because we'll set up in basements. There's a lot of times where we'll have cameras in basements, and basements are dusty places. And
there's an episode of ours, the second episode of the first season, Wayne County Museum. Now Wayne County, Lyons, New York, on the west side of Rochester, right? East side of
East side.
Rochester.
Yep.
And, a little bit past Palmyra there, and what we caught there was an orb, probably about the size again of a baseball. So that seems to kind of be like the size that we're seeing. Move down the hallway, past the set of Hot Wheels cars we had set out in this hallway. We caught it on our static surveillance cameras, and then it moves behind the banister. So you see the banister cutting. So it's definitely not dust, because you could say, well, the dust is close to the lens, that's why it looks so big. But you watch it travel down the hallway, then go behind the banister and go into a room. And as it does that, it reflects up, which is the weirdest thing. None of us are up there. So it's not a flashlight. It's not headlights, because we watched headlights go past it all night. They had no effect on that window. They had no effect on anything. And then there's also this weird floating, and this is the one my friend says looks like toilet paper, but this weird floating shape in that episode. It's about 14 minutes long. And it just, I don't even know what to call it, because it's not a circle. It's like a floating thing. I don't even know what to put. It looks like ectoplasm. You see those old pictures from the hundreds where they shoot out these fake streamers. Like, that's what it looks like. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's tough.
I'm like, well, yeah, we watch the footage and you're like, I don't know. So, but we'll set, the way it goes is, we'll whittle down the footage, and there might be a couple of things, and I'm like, you know what, it could be dust. It's not worth putting in. So
yeah, if there's even if there's the chance of all right, well, it could be we just assume that, okay, even if it's a 1% chance that it's dust, okay, we'll just assume that, all right, we'll assume it's dust and not talk about it, because then anybody can say, well, all right, that could be dust, and we'll be like, you're right, it could be. So then what's the point of even having that discussion? So it's unless it is like the other evidence we catch, unless it's super clear, and we've had those times where it's just we're sitting here stumped, like no other explanation, no we're racking our brains trying to figure it out.
Also at the Wayne County Museum, what's cool to check out in that episode, and what we also catch, is some sort of cloudy mass on the stairs. And so we set up the camera at the bottom of the basement stairs. And earlier that night, our friend Greg went down there. He really didn't like it. We all got bad vibes in the basement there. So I was speaking with the owner in the front office, and Mike and the rest of the investigators were in the back trying to get the surveillance camera set up. And they noticed the light in the basement turned on. And so they came over to me, and we were in the front office, and they're like, Steve, did you just turn the basement light on? I'm like, no, we were right here talking. So we went back, and at that time we had like an iPad type monitor, and we really couldn't see anything other than the light turning on. But when I put it on the computer screen, you could see like some sort of cloud mist thing shoots up, and then the lights go on, and none of us were over there. We were like,
wow.
Yeah. So I don't know what it was, but it was, we had this weird vibe in the basement. We didn't like it. And then all of a sudden, none of us are down there. The light goes on. And then when you watch it, you see like this weird kind of cloud thing, and it shoots right up. And
So I guess, what advice would you have for somebody who, I don't know, feels like maybe that they're encountering some sort of haunting or something paranormal going on in their home? Would you have any suggestions?
My first thing I would suggest to that person is to not feed into the things that they've seen in movies and seen in shows, just because those things can really induce fear, because you might think, your life is in danger. And, really when you look at the cases that happen, there's very little times when somebody gets actually hurt, so I would suggest first the person, to think rationally about it, and to step away from those types of things. and to read up on it. And a lot of the things that can affect it is the people and their reaction to it. And in some cases, and this goes back even back to the Bell Witch, the old Bell Witch tales in Tennessee. The resurgence of the Bell Witch after 7 years, and the family ignored it and it decided to move on. In a lot of cases, you do see people talk about how they ignored the things that were going on, and is it them just tuning it out, and then all of a sudden there's not that connection there between? Could be. It could be whatever it is trying to get their attention, knows it's not going to get in and moves on. But people can choose not to interact with it, and I think that
that's a big part of it. Yeah,
that's a big part of it. And then really, if things keep pushing and a person's uncomfortable, is then to maybe look to some local groups. Everybody has a community group that will probably be able to look into something like that for them, and research them a little bit. Everybody's got a little bit of history on the internet nowadays. Just give it a little Google and
also just research, just Google quick where you live. Like, just did something happen there? I mean, the house that we went to, it turns out, was it a training area for War of 1812?
Yeah.
So like there was a lot of soldiers in that area, and there was a lot of death in that area.
A lot of limestone, the reservoirs out there in Niagara County.
Yeah, that just this person didn't know. And so just research in the area could shed some sort of, it might not give you answers, but it might not give you ways to, say, eliminate whatever issue you're having, but it could, maybe help you learn how to deal with it, or learn, maybe this could be this, or just something of that nature.
Is there some sort of correlation between limestone and energy? I thought I've heard that somewhere. I don't know where it was, but
and there's a lot of people that do think that different types of crystals, just like with the dowsing rods and the metals and conductivity for energy, there is a belief out there that certain rocks or certain minerals just have the ability to I don't know, act like a lightning rod or an antenna of sorts. And it's so popular, like that's what they reference in Ghostbusters. They're talking about, what's the guy's, Ivan Shandor, that built that the big antenna that calls about what he used in the building and all that stuff. And it's kind of cool because, like, unless you're into that stuff,
it's just another movie line.
Yeah. Same thing with Beetlejuice. I was watching Beetlejuice the other day. I hadn't watched it in maybe 15 years. And just the idea of someone sat there and was like, okay, how come ghosts can't leave houses? Well, maybe there's these giant sandworms, and if you step out the door, you're on Saturn. Right. It really is cool. Like, think about that stuff.
But in addition to limestone, like, water has been, we have found a big conductor of just that flowing energy in places along the Erie Canal. We have found an abundance of activities, just buildings that are close to the canal or lakes.
A lot of energy in Erie Canal, a lot of residual energy that runs along there.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if every community you went to had a large number of like hauntings along there.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I love it that you guys are so close, because like I know all these places that you're talking about, so it's cool. It makes it more fun for me, anyways. Like I'm like,
right.
You talk about Mighty Taco, and you know what we're talking about.
Exactly. Paranormal, horror movie, scary movie. What's your favorite? I gotta ask.
I'm going Poltergeist.
Poltergeist.
The first Poltergeist, because it was
I love that movie.
It was probably one of the first horror movies that I saw, and it just, I think what scared me the most was the steak with the maggots. The fact that it was just happening in this house to this regular family, and that just kind of, I guess, resonated with me. Like that, like I've never been into like slasher films or like the Jason, Freddy Krueger stuff. Like that stuff has never really just stuck with me. But yeah, Poltergeist is probably up there for me. And even just like the tree outside the boy's window, like just it had such an effect of just that, I guess, realism. Just, okay, those slasher films, everything is super gory, and just it's made to be a movie. Where Poltergeist, that could be my house, like, and it's just, so like that, and like the Paranormal Activity movies, just like, people have up and down opinions of those, and I don't even remember which numbers I saw, but
Well, the first one was great. I mean,
yeah, the first, I think it was 1 and 2 that I saw.
Yeah.
The third one was whatever, but
Mm.
you know, it's those ones that I can kind of put myself in and just be like, that's what would scare me going to bed, being like, what if I go downstairs and all my cupboard doors are open now all of a sudden? Like,
Right.
so that's definitely where that sits for me.
I was 6 years old when I saw The Exorcist, and I wasn't supposed to watch it, but I did. And I still have issues watching that movie to this day. Like I'm not necessarily, I've never been a religious guy. I guess you call me a deist. I believe that, yeah, there's probably something out there, but man, there's just something about that movie. Just thinking that just some random person can just become possessed by something. Now, obviously it's Hollywood, but yeah,
No,
I don't know.
the movie is Hollywood, but have you ever read into the story behind it?
A little bit. And then I got really freaked out and I stopped.
Yeah.
But
And I mean, that's along the lines of the demonologist. We were talking about the
Yeah.
demonologist, and that stuff is the scary stuff. Even
Yeah.
us, I don't want to deal with that stuff.
What about your horror movies, Steve?
For me, I would have to say Last Action Hero. No, I love Last Action Hero. No, I would say I am a big Stephen King fan. Recently, actually, because I really never read much before. I liked more like nonfiction history type stuff. But really, as I've been working on my own fiction writings, I started really getting into Stephen King. So I would say for me, I loved The Shining. I saw it on Joe Bob Briggs used to have Monster Madness on Friday nights.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And that was the first time I saw the censored version of it. It was maybe 97, 98. And then I bought the DVD and I was like, wow, this is just so amazing, this level of talent. And Dr. Sleep, for them to be able to go back almost, 40 years you're talking about after the original came out. The original came out in 1980. Dr. Sleep came out in 2019. To be so faithful to the original and still keep with Stephen King's vision, like I think Dr. Sleep is a phenomenal movie.
I never saw that. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Ewan McGregor, I mean, last year he did what? He did that one, and then he did Birds of Prey, where he played Black Mask, and he just knocked that one out of the park too. He's a phenomenal actor. But Doctor Sleep was really cool. There's some really tense moments in Doctor Sleep, especially with us being parents, that really it's like that Pet Cemetery thing where you don't want to keep on watching,
right?
Because you don't want to see something that's in your worst nightmares.
Yeah.
And they visit it in Doctor Sleep. It's not gory, it's not jump scarish. The tension's there, and it's well done.
You know what's amazing about Stephen King is like he was lit most of the time that he was writing, at least like back in like the 80s and stuff. Like some of his classics, like I think he said he doesn't even remember writing them. And
Yep.
Right.
That's amazing to me. That I don't know, genius, pure genius.
Would you say The Exorcist is your go-to?
Yeah, well, yeah, probably. Just because that one still, for some
The
reason,
impact it had on.
Yeah. It doesn't scare me anymore, but it's still. I remember that feeling. Stepping into my friend's living room, his parents were watching it, and I was kind of watching from the side, and I didn't sleep that night. So it was, it was pretty rough. But then, I like the Paranormal Activity movie too. I thought that was actually really well done, and it came out of nowhere.
I do too.
So,
Josh, did you get to check out the new Universal, the new Unsolved Mysteries yet on Netflix?
Yes, I did. My wife and I have been watching it. Yeah, What's that?
The one on Fukushima. Did you see that one yet?
Yeah. That was wild. Yeah.
So to just give you a little bit of background, Mike, is after the tsunami and the earthquake, they started getting these reports of ghosts in the area of people trying to get home, and these taxi cab drivers. They have all these taxi cab drivers that people would get in. They'd start their fare to drive them, and they'd be like dripping wet, even though it'd be like the middle of summer out. And then the driver gets to the destination, and the people in the backseat are gone.
Really?
It happened all over the place. Yeah.
Yep.
Just all these ghosts. There's just like sociologists collecting ghost stories from them because of all this stuff that happened. It was very interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. You gotta check it out. I love it that they're paying homage to Robert Stack. Especially in the beginning in the intro there. It's kind of weird not having a host. you know. But yeah, no, I've enjoyed it, and I think they're doing a great job with it. So, gentlemen, I've had you on for an hour and a half now. I think we could keep going and going and going. I think I
No
really
problem.
enjoyed talking with you guys.
No, likewise. And actually,
Yeah.
I just have one question. Like,
Yeah.
what has got your interest in the paranormal? Like, where does that come from for you?
Um, Man, so I don't know, man. Ever since I was a kid, I read my first UFO book when I was a kid, and I was like, "What is going on here?" You know.
Right, right.
So UFOs led into ghosts, and I've never uh, seen anything that I could consider to be a ghost or a spirit or anything like that. I've had one encounter overseas. It's a little outside of Fallujah in Iraq with me and a bunch of other guys too, looking up in the air through night vision and seeing multiple craft, extremely high altitudes, pulling maneuvers. I'm not a physicist, but I can't explain the things that we saw, and it was pretty wild.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, I'm not saying it's little green men. I don't know. Who knows?
Right.
Maybe it's a top secret, military aircraft or something, or Space Force or something like that. I don't know. But that was pretty wild. It was cool, and that's probably the only experience I've ever had that I can even say is paranormal. I don't know. I've been very, very interested in it. I like the idea of it. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's always interested me.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I used to watch Ghost Hunters back in the day. I remember it was, what's that lighthouse that's down in St. Augustine?
Yeah, St. Augustine Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Did you guys, I don't know if you ever watched that show really, or if you ever saw this episode, but there was an episode where these guys had a camera pointing up and you could see something. It looked over the rail
Mm-hmm.
and then it was going up and up and up.
Yeah.
Dude, I remember the hairs on my arms stood up watching that. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that is nuts. Yeah, I don't know.
That like got me was it was a different lighthouse, and they had left the camera up in one of the top rooms, and they left the camera running, and something moved and pulled the chair, and there was nothing in there.
Mm.
And I was just like, I remember that. It was right when it came out. It was like the first or second season, along when they had saying. I was just like, that's really kind of what it was like. Maybe we can go to these places.
Yeah.
Really, that's where it started. It was around 06 that we did the Swiss Chalet one.
Yeah. Hey, anybody can say what they will about those guys, but they definitely started something. I mean,
oh, for sure. Yeah.
For sure. And I think it's a good thing, more people who are like yourselves who are looking for, I guess I want to call it the truth. Look at X-Files about it. But, I think that's great. The more evidence you guys can collect, and yeah, I'm on board, man. I am fans of you guys, and I'm going to continue to follow you. And I hope you guys come back.
That,
yeah.
really.
Yeah.
And we do. You will have to meet up because we do a lot of hunts, out in the Rochester area. And
anytime.
So,
yeah. So, I'd love to have you guys back on the show at some point. And
anytime.
Yeah.
If you have any members of haunted places down there, let us know. And
I sure will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you have Mike and Steve from At The Gates Paranormal. What a ride this has been. This has been really, really cool. Yeah.
Really cool.
All right, so I will keep in touch with you guys, and like I said, I'll put all your information in there, so you can spread the word. And
and when you get this out and put this up wherever, let us know, and we'll push it forward too, and get it out there as much as we can.
Yep. Cool, sounds good. Hey guys, thanks again. I really appreciate it.
No, anytime, man. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye now.
Bye.